Welcome to PredWings podcast, where Smashville and Hockeytown collide. And now your hosts, Rhett and Ron White and D-Law, Dan Lawless. Welcome to PredWings podcast, episode 98. It's been so long, I almost forgot what number it was. It's been.
Yeah, it's been. I'll take the blame. It has been a terrible November for this guy here.
One heck of a month, and so I hear you tried to. I don't know if you were trying to put an elevator in your bathroom, or you just decided to.
Oh, dude, that was just the start of it. No, I tripped over the existing plumbing that I was just about to take out and put my foot right through the ceiling in my kitchen. Uh-oh. So that was pleasant, and I'm demoing and remodeling my bathroom, and yeah, that just started this whole debacle. And then I had to get some subflooring for my bathroom floor, loading it up at Home Depot, and I popped something in my arm. Thought I dislocated my elbow, but instead I tore my bicep, and that put me out for a while. And yeah, that's about it. And then I'm just traveling quite a bit for work lately too. So
well, it wasn't not quite like me with my phone incident there. So I guess when you do things, you do them a lot more than me.
Stars. If I do it, I'm all in, man.
Although I did.
Let me tell you, the bicep was probably one of the worst pains I've ever felt in my life.
At least when I injure myself, I do it on the ice.
Yeah, this was bad, man. Like as soon as I I felt a pop, my arm just went limp. I couldn't move it. I couldn't move anything. My fingers wouldn't move. I mean, it was a wild experience. But obviously it came to, and it is so painful. Like I have shoulder issues. I would take my shoulder issues over that again. I mean, it was tough. It hurt.
Yeah, well, let's see. Our social media, PredWings Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and X and YouTube. We're at PredWings Pod, and you can also listen and follow us on Podbean. Email us at PredWingsPodcast@gmail.com. So usually it's me that has that little small talk before we head to the Beer League Minute. But you actually had a kind of an exciting month, although it wasn't exciting. It was
not in a good way exciting, at least.
I think you'd probably rather have another dull month. But so yeah, we're finally recording. It's November. We haven't had an episode since October, but that's what it is. So let's roll right into the Beer League Minute. It's going to be really quick. So going back, we had no game on October 31st, so it's been that long since we recorded. Probably a good thing I wouldn't remember, although I did write it down. So, so our game November 7th, we actually had a decent game. We won it 7-6, although it wasn't that close. We actually had a big lead. We were in control of the whole game. It was like 7. They scored like 2 or 3 goals like in the last 2 minutes. It wasn't really that close. I mean, it was basically a 7-2 game. Probably should have had 3 to 6 goals, but a couple were breakaways. Just that kind of a game. At the end of the game, we're way ahead, and the team kind of like thinks they have it in the bag, and it's beer league hockey. And so that moving on to last week was the 14th. I just had a terrible game. It was fourth place team, I believe. If we would have won the game, we would have tied them. I think it was like 8-4, 8-5, or something like that. I don't remember what the score. I know I gave up like 7 or 8. It was a bad game. I just got to move on. We got another. And matter of fact, that game, the team that we played that we just lost to, that's a totally different team now. But their first ever team, going back to, I think it was like 2015 or whatever when they started, or 2016 maybe, 2017. I can't remember the exact year. I was skating out at the time. It was a summer league. I actually had a hat trick against that team. I think it was the same goalie too. Not sure. I can't remember. It's been so long. But my only hat trick, I just wanted to mention that it's the team. It was their first season, their first year. Obviously, things change. It's a totally different team. They got different players. There might be a few the same players, but it's beer league. So we got a game coming up this week. We got 2 games left. So this week, we got another top 4 team. So hopefully we can bounce back and get a win. And then we have a week off for Thanksgiving that's coming up. And then our last game is we actually play the team on week 1. So our fall season's coming to a close. And just briefly, I did hop in net earlier tonight. Not my team. I just subbing in net. It was a Tuesday D- league. I didn't do too bad. We lost 5-1. First period kind of bad. 3 goals in that first period, then 1 in the second, 1 in the third. But there was a couple goals. I don't know how the heck he scored it. He was at the boards and right on top of like the icing line near the corner, and somehow he hit the net, got it between me and the net. I mean, I don't know. This is D- league. I mean, that's something you see in the NHL. Well, maybe not against NHL goalies. I was kind of cheating away from that. I wasn't really hugging the post like I should have. But it's beer league hockey. I mean, players will attempt that shot and it'll go behind the net or go wide. And then the last goal, it hit the post and went in. I mean, it was like top shelf. I heard it hit the ding. I heard it hit the post, and I was like, "Oh boy!" But I don't know how good the shots were, but the scoreboard said 32 shots. Although at least one was a post hit, not the one that went in. But so, 5 goals on 32 shots is probably not that good. That's all I got for the Beer League Minute.
Okay.
So, I mean, I just had fun. I mean, it was this team and not my regular team. And so I guess we can just jump. We got a lot of recaps. So I know mine are going to be really quick, and I kind of want to roll into another topic. So we'll start with the Wings.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a disaster. I mean, since we last met, the Wings have gone 3-6, and their only wins have come against Buffalo, which they barely squeaked out. That was a 2-1 win, and they beat Chicago, which that was a good game.
Buffalo's playing really well lately, though.
They have been, and then they squeaked one out against a god awful Pittsburgh Penguins trying to find themselves team. And yes, they've got some players, but Crosby's getting older. Yes, he's still good. Malkin, same thing. Like, they've got some guys, but they have not been, to that point, had not been playing good hockey. And Detroit just fell flat on their West Coast trip. I mean, Detroit is like dead last for their penalty kill. They cannot kill a penalty to save their life. And I'm not sure what it is, but that is costing them games. that is a huge Achilles heel for them right now. And Tanguay's got to get this figured out because it's just not working. And, like the overtime loss, just last night to San Jose, Detroit just did not look good. They haven't looked good at all in any of their games. Even their wins, they look sluggish. They're not playing, just the fundamentals, like the back check. They're letting cherry pickers get open, and you can't do those things. I mean, this is the NHL, and I think we have to start questioning Lalonde with all this. Like, yes, our power play is great. We're like third in the NHL right now. But that's the only time we can score goals. We're not producing shots. It's just it's a struggle. I mean, the games are, I watch them because I want to be able to talk about them. I enjoy watching hockey. But the Detroit games are so boring. There are hardly any penalties, maybe a few here or there, but nothing crazy. Like, they played almost an entire period without a penalty, or an entire game rather.
Yeah, there was a couple games I was actually watching the Wings. I can't remember which game, but I remember saying to you during the game, I was like, this is a boring game.
Yeah, they don't shoot. There's no goals. There's no checking. There's no fighting. I mean, it's just literally 10 guys skating around the ice. I mean, this is going on a whole nother tangent there, D-Law, but I mean, this is a Bettman issue. This is why people don't watch hockey. This is why people are tuning into soccer. That's why people are starting to watch women's basketball. I mean, all these sports are taking over the place and ranking of the NHL, and it's because games are boring.
That PWHL, that's getting some traction.
But all I'm saying is the games are boring. You don't see the fights like you used to. I mean, even to last year, I feel like the fights are down. I'd have to look that up and see, but there's just not much physicality. There's just not much rivalry. There's not much excitement. It's just speed. But you can't even tell the speed anymore from the TV because it's just normal. So, and I know that might sound ridiculous, and the guys are very talented. Like, these kids are tremendous athletes. I won't take that away from them. They're just boring to watch. They're fast. And Detroit's got, it's just defensive breakdowns. Getting back to the Red Wings, they just cannot back check. They cannot keep guys out of the slot. They cannot clean pucks up. They are struggling so bad in the defensive zone that it's just it's killing them. I mean, it's absolutely destroying them. And I don't know. Have you watched many of their games at all, D-Law?
Well, there was a couple I saw in entirety, and then there's some that the ones that they played the same night as the Predators, which actually lately has been a lot. I've always seen like the first period or whatever, and yeah, I didn't really take notes on any of them, but I just remember they just didn't seem to. They're not playing like. I know it's a totally different team, but I remember, back in the day when the Wings were really good. I mean, obviously they're different players, but they just the system. I mean, obviously the system's changed with coaches, but it just.
But when do we start? I mean, we're gonna lose another coach in such a short period of time. Like, that just doesn't seem. I don't know. I don't know. I don't. I mean, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it still ain't beautiful. And I don't feel like the Yzer plan is coming together like it should. I'm not. I know it's still early. I know he's only 4 years in. I get all that, but we're starting to see the fruits of his labor come into the NHL level, and we're just not seeing. I mean, we have Marco Casper up, and instead of getting some of our other guys who, yeah, they're probably not ready, but when will they be ready? We anticipated seeing, a few more guys up this year, and it's just not happening. I mean, Jonathan Berggren, he's struggling. He's not terrible, but he's not producing like you would want him to. I mean, granted, the wings aren't entirely either, but Larkin's doing okay. Kane's had a couple of big goals. Casper, he could be a bright spot. He's been playing some pretty good hockey. He's got a couple of goals in his last couple of games, and I think his first one came against Anaheim. Then he had one last night. But he's starting to break out a little bit. He got some second line time last night. Lalonde's shuffling things up. So I'm excited to see what he does. But he is essentially the bright spot. I mean, you are seeing some of these guys that Yzerman's put out there, but looking down, it's just I don't know. I don't know if the plan is to keep bringing in veterans that are older that we can afford and just ride this out. I mean, I feel like we're going to have to pay at some point. I don't know. That's all down the road. But looking at this deal, it looks like every single one of their losses, they gave up a number of power play goals. The only one that I take it back was LA. That was the only game in the span that we just talked about that they did not give up a power play goal. Their penalty kill is just straight up atrocious. Terrible. Yeah, I mean that's all I'm getting into for the Wings. I mean, I really hope they can pick it up here. I mean, Detroit really, really, really needs to have a little bit of a life to them. They got to find a spark and just run with that momentum. We get it. You're not in a Stanley Cup champion caliber team this year, but at least give the fans something to watch. I mean, if you're not going to score and win games, like find somebody that'll fight. Bring Watson and tell him to fight everybody. He's not even one of the league's biggest tough guys, but just tell him to go at it. Give us fans something to enjoy.
Watson just does cheap stuff.
He does. He's been, you know what though? I'll give him this. Well, I don't like him for his off-ice antics. We've already discussed that on a show probably a couple of years ago. My mind has not been changed on that. I think he's a scumbag for what he did. But watching him play, like he's not taking liberties on players like he had in the past. Maybe it's because he's older. Maybe it's because he can't hang in this league that just increasingly gets faster every year. I'm not sure, but I mean, he throws his body, but he's not being stupid about it, getting stupid calls.
It is a young person's league, and it's getting younger and younger, even though there are still older players. And I mean, but then again, you look at some of these older players that are really excelling right now. Well, none of the Predators, but so I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on the older elite versus the older like veterans like Watson.
But plain and simple, the Red Wings need to find they got to find a way to pick it up on the penalty kill. I mean, that is literally costing them games. They could potentially be winning. Instead of being 3-6, they could have gone 6-3. Looking at these games, if they had just played better on their special teams, so that's an area of concern that Detroit definitely needs to address. I'm not quite sure how Lalonde or Yzerman or Tanguay is going to do that, but they got to put their heads together and figure this out, because I don't know if it's just the guys aren't ready. I mean, who knows? But something's got to give here, and we got to stop giving up those easy. I shouldn't say we can't kill off penalties, but we aren't killing off any. We are dead last. Like, we're terrible. So we got to figure out how to get around that and start killing off some of these penalties.
But on the flip side, they're number third best power play.
Yeah, I mean they do. They move the puck very well on the power play. But I mean, you can't just rely on power plays to win, because I mean, look at that one game we were talking about where it went almost 3 periods without a penalty. Well, you need to figure out how to score when you've got a 5-on-5 scenario. So yeah, I mean that's good. I'm happy for that because that'll come in big time when Detroit starts, showing that they want to be a contender of any sort. So that will help them. But for now, they got to start putting pucks on net, and they got to figure out how to put the puck in the net.
Right up there along the elite as far as 30%, and I mean, 30% power play is very elite because it's you got 4 teams that are above 30% power play, and they're all well, there's of the 4, 2 of them are elite. Well, I would say 3 would be elite, even though one's struggling. And I don't want to call Detroit elite yet.
No,
I think they were years ago, but they're still building. But and it's kind of like the flip with Nashville is like their power play is struggling. I mean they're 10th, but their power plays actually get coming around. I don't want to get too much in the Predators right now, but the Predators do have the number 1 penalty killing. So I mean, a lot of that I think has to do with the goaltenders. I mean, yeah, it does, but as far as like because you see a lot of shots when you're shorthanded, but I mean, a lot of that is they're getting the puck out and not letting the other team setting up. So, yeah, I don't know what the Wings have to do to get their penalty killing back on track. I don't know if it's just confidence or goaltending. I haven't really watched their penalty killing very much.
Yeah, they're not able to. They're just not able to get the puck out. They can't. They swarm the puck and they're just not. They can't clear it. They are weak on the puck. But anyway, enough of this Red Wings debacle. Let's talk about some Nashville Predators. What do we got?
Well, pretty much the same old. I mean, since we our last show, they were still bad. I mean, they're still bad now, but going back to the end of October, Edmonton, that game. I mean, in that game, Edmonton played their backup, which is kind of an insult, really. And I don't want to get too much into it. I mean, yeah, your starter can't play 80 games, but I mean, and at that time they did not have a back. I mean, I could understand if you have like a back to back, but at that time they had like 2 days off before, and they had like 2 days off after. So that was plenty of time to get their starter. There was no reason not to play the starter, and they were in Nashville 2 days before. So yeah, I don't understand that situation as far as that. But I don't know if the refs, NHL, kind of colluding, with getting not letting because they did not call any penalties on Edmonton. And same thing goes with Colorado. And this is not just against the Predators. I was going to watch a few Colorado games against other teams, and there was a lot of calls that they did not call for Colorado. And I know one game in particular, Colorado, Philadelphia. I know we're talking about the Predators, but they didn't. They just weren't calling penalties against Colorado and Edmonton. I don't know if it's the NHL that's telling them that, or if it's the referees. Just they get certain referees that just won't call penalties on teams. I don't know, but it's just turnovers for the Predators. And I mentioned how boring, some of the Red Wings games that I was watching. It was kind of a boring game. It's just not the Predator style. They just weren't. They weren't fighting themselves. It ended up being a bad loss. And then then they got then they had like I mentioned, Colorado. Their power play just was not very good at the time. I mean, Stamkos and Yossi had power play goals in that game. But Saros, he saved them in this game, even though I believe they lost. They actually won that game, but it was because of Saros. He was remarkable, and he can't. They can't rely on him. Moving on, the Kings game, there's more inconsistency. It's just like from game to game, shift to shift. They were just inconsistent. And they were just absolutely. You're so pathetic. And it's just like, I just don't understand how they can be that bad. Like, they'll be good and they'll be bad, and not just in games, but inside the game. Like the shift to shift, they'll have a good shift, and then all of a sudden have a bad shift. I mean, and yeah, they might be playing against a different line, but it's just these players like Stamkos and Forsberg and O'Reilly and Marchessault, I don't understand if they just take the shift off. I don't understand it. A former Predator, Fiala, he ended up scoring for the Kings. And that game, Saros was a broken record. He was their best player in this game, even though there was a loss. And then the Washington game, it was just a pathetic. Just another pathetic game. I want to go, I'm going to jump ahead to some other games because I want to really dive down there as a play in this Washington game that, and then, it was back to back against Florida at Washington, at Florida. And between the Washington and Florida games, they had 13 penalties. And I mean, yeah, they got the number one penalty killing, but you're playing with fire if you take that many penalties in 2 games. I mean, yeah, you might have a good penalty killing, but eventually teams are going to, they're going to put a couple power play goals in. Next thing you know, your percentage and your penalty killing percentage will drop a lot faster than your power play percentage will raise, just because that's just the way it works. I mean, you give up a power play goal, or you give up a power play goal, and your penalty killing goes way down. So, I mean, luckily, Saros is playing on top of his game right now. That's pretty much saving their season, even though they're still at the bottom. But they just didn't look. They just didn't look like. I mean, Florida was just having their way. I mean, they were just totally different. I mean, the Panthers just showed them what an elite team is, and I mean, they were just all over them. I mean, the Utah game, they bounced back with a nice win, and then they after that Utah game, they go on their, like I had mentioned a few weeks ago, their annual CMA trip, and it's been pretty pathetic. I mean, 3 losses in a row. I mean, yeah, granted 2 of them are overtime losses, but they're still losses. They're starting to play a little better, but at the Calgary game, they just they just couldn't score, and then they did end up with Vancouver at Vancouver. They actually played pretty good in that game. They actually had a lead. I don't think I actually don't even think they trailed in that game. They did. They believed they did. Actually, it was Nyquist had a empty net goal. It seems like Nyquist only scores long range empty net goals. He had a chance at empty net goal like inside the zone, inside the offensive zone, and he missed the net somehow, but he shoots it from his defensive zone and it goes dead center in the net. So it's just, and I mean, that's just, Nyquist just, he just, I don't know. He's a master at those long range shots. I don't know if he did that when he was Detroit or not. But I just thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean he's obviously lost a little pep in his step, but yeah, he's always been a pretty decent support player. He's
But
been able.
he's
Got
a
a good
smart
shot.
player.
He is a smart player. He
I,
sees the ice
I mean,
well.
I assume he was really good when he was younger. I mean, fast and everything, but I assume, a smart player isn't just going to, I mean, maybe over the years you get smarter, but I'm thinking he's the type of player was smart even when he was younger. So yeah, but he makes smart plays, and that's what you need with that veteran. But yeah, there was, kind of backtracking a little bit, and I kind of wanted to leave this at the end because I kind of want to roll into this topic. There was a goal review challenge in the Washington game for goalie interference. And if I can remember exactly what happened, kind of refresh my memory because it's been a while ago. I believe it should not have been a review, or not been. It shouldn't have been goalie interference. This was in Washington. I don't remember. I think it was Forsberg. Looking at the video, he was pushed into the goaltender, and I was watching from a couple different videos or angles, and they called it interference, but it looked to me like he was pushed in by one of the Washington players. Rule 69 of the NHL rule book for goaltender interference, it states goals should be disallowed only if an attacking player, either by his positioning or by contact, impairs the goaltender's ability to move freely within the crease or defender. An attacking player initiates intentional deliberate contact, which in this case it was. From the video, it sure looked like it was pushed in by the opposite team, and it also states that contact, for purposes of rule, contact says incidental or otherwise shall mean any contact that is made between or among a goalkeeper and attacking player, whether by means of a stick or part of the body. Now it also says here, if an attacking player has been pushed, shoved, or fouled by a defending player, which to me would be the Washington player, so as to cause him to come into contact with the goalkeeper, such contact will not be deemed contact initiated by the attacking player, provided the attacking player has made a reasonable effort to avoid such contact, which he, in my watching this video, it didn't look like he was even going to the net. I mean, he was going to the net, but it didn't look like he was actually going to go into the goaltender if he wouldn't have got pushed. And it also says if a defending player has been pushed, shoved, or fouled by an attacking player, in this case he was, so as to cause a defending player to come into contact with his own goalkeeper, such contact shall be deemed contact initiated by the attacking player. No penalty, obviously, there was no penalty, and a goal is scored. Would be disallowed. I just don't understand how they can call that interference. I'm not sure how it's goalie interference.
So I'd have to see it again, because if you're pushed into him, that's not your fault, and they don't usually call that.
And I've seen it in other games, and it's like they'll call a goal, or and it's like, I mean, I can understand if the player initiates contact, yes, but there's been situations where it looks like like he was pushed into him or knocked into him, and in some cases they'll call it a goal, in some cases they won't call it a goal, and it's like, I mean, the rules stated right there, and you got the video evidence. How can you have a couple different, like, it's to me. I mean, obviously it's not black and white because every situation is different. But I mean, you're either pushed or you're not pushed,
Right.
and there's the video evidence should clearly show that he was either pushed or not. Now, I don't know. I mean, you could argue if he was pushed hard or soft or. I mean, I guess. I mean, it doesn't really matter. As far as how hard or soft you push him in the goaltender, it's still the put you still push him in there. I mean, I just don't understand. It seems to me inconsistent. I mean, obviously you're gonna different refs, but they do have it. Most of the time, the reviews will go to Toronto or the goal situation room.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually the same people. I think so. I just don't understand. I'm just kind of flustered as far as it seems inconsistent to me, and I don't understand why. I mean, because
we just have to monitor it. We got to see, because that's the only instance that I've seen of it. So we just got to keep an eye and see if it is consistent or not consistent.
I've seen it in a couple of games, but I didn't really mark it down. But I mean, it's just I don't understand. Yeah. But that's it's just the Predators they're starting to play better. Basically, was I guess I just want to get out of the recaps. The first part of my recaps, they were still struggling and they just not playing well. I mean, yeah, they're losing games, but at least most of those games that they lose, other than the Florida and Washington games or the Edmonton game, they're actually playing good. I mean, they're getting leads, and they've actually had two nothing leads at time. A lot of different times. I saw it in the stat last game, and I didn't write it down. It was something like 8 or 9 games they've trailed 2-0, and I mean you can't. They are getting better at that, but I mean, they're still in last place, and I mean, maybe if they can put together a win streak coming up, this road trip is almost over. They got one more game on the road trip in Seattle, which kind of a struggling team right now. So maybe they can build on that win against Vancouver, and then then they return home to play Winnipeg coming up on Saturday. So they do have a couple of games out before that. So and then they're going to have some home games coming up. And they do have some road games, but get this 5-game, 6-game road trip out of the way. They're going to start having some home games. Maybe they can start putting some wins together. Maybe this road trip, got the team together. Stamkos had a couple nice power play goals against Vancouver, so it's nice to see him. Their power play is starting to click. And interesting thing, yeah, I'm kind of looking back on it. I'm kind of upset that they did not sign Lankinen. But they didn't sign him because of the deal with Saros. I think they gave. I mean, in these days and age, the goaltenders are getting a lot of money now. And yes, Saros, he's played a lot of games, a lot of he's kept the Preds in a lot of these games, even the losses. He was a couple of losses. He was their best player, in my opinion, even though he lost. But Lankinen goes to Vancouver, and that's what he wanted. When he left for free agency, he wanted a chance to be a starter. And I mean, you can't fault him. That's everybody wants to be every goalie wants to be a starter in NHL. I mean, obviously Demko's injured. probably for another month or so. They're saying. But Lankton's actually leading in goals against, and he was playing in that. Obviously, he's a starter for Vancouver right now with Demko out. So he faced Saros, and the Preds managed to get 4 goals against them because one was empty net. So they I mean, it was nice to see. I mean, there's I think 2 at least 2 power play goals. Stamkos had 2 power play goals in that game. There might have been a third. I think Yossi or Forsberg had another power play goal. But so it was just kind of nice to see him actually beat a former goalie, because usually when the Predators face a former goalie, they usually can't even score a goal. Like with Connor Ingram in Utah, they usually can't score. They usually can't score on him. Although they did this past time when they played Utah at home. But I also forgot to mention the previous show, Stamkos, before my recap. This was the last show back on October 28th. He was when the Predators visited Tampa Bay. That was his first regular season game, and Tampa Bay had honored him. And I totally slipped my mind. I forgot to mention that. So, I mean, obviously that happens. So, I mean, it was nice to see. And, they had the NHL had the Hall of Fame induction. Poyle and Weber were one, and I believe Detroit had somebody go into, I think, and there's a couple women, at least one women's hockey player that was inducted. So it was nice to see Poyle and Weber actually get inducted for the Predators. So that's all I have. Oh yeah, I know going back. I don't know if you wanted to mention this or not. Have Detroit sent Oimada to Utah? This is going back.
Send him packing. Yeah,
that was the end of October, I think it was.
Yeah.
But I've watched a couple of Utah games, and that might be a good fit. I don't know how it's going to go for Detroit because they just got Detroit draft pick. But I mean, I don't know.
Okay. You know what thinking about something else. You know who I would love to see behind the bench of the Red Wings, who's had a pretty successful career coaching himself, Sergei Fedorov. I think that would be an interesting. Somebody had mentioned that, and I had read about it. And I've been thinking about this for about a day and a half since I read it. And it just makes sense. I mean, you have Lidstrom back in the front office. I mean, Draper, Maltby. I mean, it would just make sense to bring Fedorov, and he's got a pretty successful career. I mean, I think he won a couple of championships in the KHL or back-to-back finalists or something like that. And this year he fell short, and they cut his contract. So, I mean, it's just the timing could be perfect. I don't know. It'd be interesting. I think it'd be cool. I think he's a good coach, and I think maybe he could give them something that they need in the locker room. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I don't think it's getting to that point where they turn into further coach. Maybe
have you watched all their games? God,
maybe a couple months if things don't do it.
Nah, I don't think so. Now that Montgomery's gone, I think that just opens the door to do it sooner.
Yeah, I was going to say the Bruins just fired their coach. I mean, in Columbus, they had a bad loss against Columbus yesterday. I think I don't know if that's leading up to it, but I just want to say Columbus got him fired. I mean, you always say that just because they're the last team to beat them. Columbus is the last in the division. I mean, Boston. I mean, they're fourth. I mean, they're not really all that bad. I mean, they're only 2 points behind Tampa Bay.
Okay.
I mean, and so, I mean, But I have watched a couple Boston games here and there, and they didn't look all that good. I mean, and Joe Sacco was. I think he's just an interim. I think he was an assistant coach under Montgomery, if I believe, or
I
something.
think so.
I don't know if he's. I think they just labeled him the interim. I don't know if they actually replaced him. I haven't really seen it yet. Too much into this. I just want to mention Seattle. You know, they're kind of struggling, but the goalie. I don't even remember what who they're playing. I don't remember who they're playing now. But the goalie had covered the puck, and as Cousins, whoever Nick Cousins is playing for. Is it Florida? Whoever Nick Cousins.
Yeah. Yes.
The goalie had it covered, and Cousins. I mean, he plays that style, which I mean, he did that in Nashville, and I liked it. And I mean. Yeah, that's what you want to do, but the goal had to cover, and he just kept jamming his stick on it, and it did not get
to
loose.
The whistle.
He did not. It did not get loose, and then they ended up scoring. They did challenge the goal, but they did counter the goal. But I mean, I want to know what a whistle was, but I mean, I guess some referees will let him play. I mean, what do you got to do? I mean, as a goalie, and I'm got it covered, and somebody's coming in and jabbing me, I don't like that. I mean, yeah, where was the Seattle defense to get Cousins out of there?
I mean, if it was that bad, then the refs would have blown the whistle.
Yeah, I guess.
You always play to the whistle, always.
And, Minnesota's been playing really well, but LA came in. Minnesota Minnesota was playing really well at home. They had not lost at home before LA did. I think this was a couple weeks ago, actually. I haven't really been paying attention to Minnesota. But there was a game. And this kind of goes back to the Washington. I don't think it was goaltender interference. But there was a goal review in a Colorado Seattle game. I didn't think it was actually the goal. This one goal, it was they had two reviews on it. I thought you could only review it once.
I don't know anything about that.
One was reversed and one was called a goal. Now they reviewed it. I don't remember what the initial call was, but they reviewed it and they reversed it, and then they reviewed it again. Maybe it was a challenge. I don't know, but I didn't think you could do that. And then they called it a goal, and I think Colorado ended up winning that game. But I just thought that was kind of weird that they reviewed it twice. I didn't think you could do that, but it is what it is. I mean, yeah, Colorado, they started as bad as the Predators, and they flipped it around. So maybe the Predators can just, maybe they can find their stride. But there was another game, San Jose, as bad as they are, I know they just beat Detroit. It was in overtime, though. Detroit did get a point. So, but Columbus had 51 shots on goal. 51 shots on
That's
goal.
A couple.
And San Jose won the game in overtime, 2-1. So that goalie, I mean, 50 saves. 50 saves for that goalie.
That's astounding.
So, but that game in overtime, I mean, it was just, I mean, I know if previous years I would complain about the 3-on-3 overtime and saying, this, but that overtime was very exciting. I mean, it was just end to end. I don't think there's maybe a couple whistles. It was just constant action. I mean, it was just an exciting to watch. Even the end of the third period, but especially the overtime. But so I know I had mentioned previously on our show is that how I didn't like the overtime, and I still don't like. I, I don't like the format as far as the points because it takes away the late in the third period, especially when it's tied, because teams know they're going to get a point, so they kind of play it safe. I want to see them. I don't know the answer. I want to see that the end of the third period, like they want to go for it. I mean, and get that. You might see that more in division games, and especially at the end of the season where they don't want their team to get points because the extra points, so they're going to try to go hard and take that point away from them. So I don't I guess I don't know. Maybe teams just need to not sit back. Maybe that's more of a coaching thing. I don't know. They seem to play safe, kind of like football in a way. But
that's right.
Yeah,
they play their game all game long.
And then there was, but yeah, there was a couple scary incidences. Dylan Holloway. I mean, he did come back. He was hit with a puck.
I saw that
last week. They actually left. He got hit with a puck, and then he went to the bench, and then they ended up had to take him off on a stretcher. I didn't actually wasn't actually watching the game, but
Me neither.
I was watching another network, and they showed it. They didn't show how he got hit. And then another one, a referee. I didn't see this one. No, that was in a Colorado Philadelphia game. He collided with Josh Manson.
I don't know how Manson didn't see him. I mean, I'm not saying I did not see him.
I didn't see the video how they collided, so I can't.
Skated right up behind him and almost checked him.
But
when the puck was down deep, it was at the blue line.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a fast game. I'm sure it wasn't intentional because, he went up and checked multiple times.
They did end up having to take the referee off a stretcher, so that's 2 in the last week that they had to leave the game on the stretcher. I don't want to see that, but I think obviously Holloway's played since then, so that's a good thing. And I believe the referee, I don't think he's skating yet, but I think he's doing a lot better. As far as injuries, at the last show where we had mentioned McDavid got injured and he was out against that the first Edmonton game.
Yeah, he's out 2 to 3 weeks.
He was, but he came back. So that's
he's been skating lately, I believe.
He's actually played.
Did he? Okay.
NHL made it look like he had a great game. He had a goal and assist -3, 24 minutes. So I wouldn't exactly call that great, even though the NHL was saying how great he said he shined.
I mean, 2.9 is always.
But he had 3 points against the the Senators.
Okay.
But so yeah, he was out for a couple weeks. He was out against the Edmonton, the Preds game in Nashville. He wasn't even in Nashville for that trip, but he did. I think he had a goal in the game, but when the Preds played at Edmonton.
So he's back and firing on all cylinders now. Isn't Matthews out now?
He's day to day. I don't know if he's playing. He could return next week. But Ovechkin, he's actually leading. He's really lighting it up,
man.
So he's actually leading with 15, leading the league with 15 goals.
Yep.
So he's got 868 career goals right now. So he's only 26. So he probably, if he keeps his pace,
he's not only 26. He's much older than that.
No,
he has 26 goals remaining.
26 remaining. That's what I was getting at.
Gotcha.
26 to tie. But the only thing is he's got a leg injury. It happened the other day, he did score that game. But so he's week to week. So hopefully he can keep that pace up. And he is leading
the record. He's going for it.
He is leading the league with 15 goals right now.
Yeah, I think he can do it.
But I think that's all the injuries that I've seen so far. The big ones we already touched on. Montgomery getting fired. I don't know how many more of the suspensions. So the only one I've seen. I know how much you and Jeannot was a pest in that LA Nashville game, and I just remember it kind of upsets me. He plays on the edge, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would like to see him in Nashville, but they got other players, so I don't know. Maybe he's going to need to move on. But he was suspended 3 games for an illegal check that I had. I don't remember who it was against. And surprisingly, he had no prior history with suspensions, and he plays on the edge like that. He was fined once. Yeah, I think when he was with the Predators, but so I think that's all the fines. Reeves suspended 5 games for a check to the head.
Yeah, Darnell.
Yes, that happened Saturday.
Yeah, he's unnecessary.
5 games, so nice to see that they're starting to give some lengthy because he's had a history too. I don't know if Nurse got injured in that play. Let's see.
He's out.
Jeannot. The Jeannot hit was against Vancouver's Besser. Is that how you saying it, Besser? So that was on the 7th, November 7th. He did get a match penalty. Reeves did end up with a match penalty in that game too. There's a check to the head. But I think that's all the fines that I
talk about. Neil Pionk.
Oh, Pionk. Okay, Pionk. Did he get suspended?
He did for clipping.
$5,000
fine penalty or fine for
clip
when he clipped Boquist.
Okay, he must not have any history. So that's all the fines and suspensions. There, other than the trade, the Olimata trade that we just talked about, got San Jose got Timothy Liljegren from Toronto for Matt Benning and the 3rd round pick and the 6th round pick, and that turned out, well, I don't know so much for Toronto. But it's really paid dividends. San Jose's, I mean, Liljegren's been playing really well for San Jose. Not sure what he did with Detroit, but I mean, I'm not saying as far as points, but as far as defense, yeah, I think that's what San Jose needs too. He's a steady defenseman. That could be a huge pick for huge pickup for San Jose. I believe. Greer is still the GM of San Jose. That could be a huge trade for that he made for that. Just briefly, the PredWings 10. It's kind of the same for me. I know when Florida just had a huge statement win against Winnipeg 5-0, but then Winnipeg just came back and beat them 6-2. But I got Winnipeg 1, Florida. And then I got Washington at 3 just because they've been red hot riding Ovechkin. Carolina, they had that 7-game win streak. Actually, I think they had a 9. I think it ended up being like an 8 or 9 before Colorado beat them. And then Colorado 5. New Jersey, they're still sitting pretty good. Vancouver, Minnesota, the Kings, and Tampa Bay. And of course, I mean, it's not a surprise. I got Utah dropping out, and then Vegas and Dallas dropping out. Vegas seems to be a mess. Dallas, I mean, they're still a good team. I'm just not sure what's going on with Dallas. I mean, they're sitting 3rd in the division. But as far as Vegas, I mean, yeah, they're still first in the Pacific, but I mean, they got LA and Calgary right behind them, and Edmonton. But I mean, they've lost some games that they probably should have won.
I mean, I had Washington at number 2, but with Ovechkin going down, I think I'm gonna have to bump them down a little bit. I think I'm gonna have to go Winnipeg, Carolina, Washington. Or I'm sorry, Winnipeg, Carolina, Minnesota. I'll probably throw Florida in the mix. Throw Washington in there. Probably Vegas, New York, Toronto, Rangers. That is, and probably the Kings. The Kings are playing some pretty good hockey right now.
Yeah, I just felt that. I mean, Florida overall. I mean, before they just lost to Winnipeg, which, I mean, Winnipeg, I mean, granted, you're probably not going to beat them twice in that short amount of time, especially after knocking them flat on their butt, 5-0. Winnipeg had a little chip on their shoulder and wanted to show to Florida they're still good. But, they're showing they're the defending champions, and
for a reason.
That's why that's why I kept them at number 2. I had to keep Colorado in at 5, even though they just their start is just. I mean, they started 0-5, and I mean, 20 games in now. But just really quick, before we get into our weekly picks, the Admirals, I'm not going to spend too much time. They're sitting at 9-3-0-1. They just really haven't been paying attention to Milwaukee lately. Been kind of busy, but they dropped one last weekend at home to the Griffins, 4-2.
Anthony C is back on the Griffins, by the way.
Oh,
just throw that out there.
Okay. Yeah, and
that's as far as I know about the Griffins.
Let's see. Well, they lost. The Milwaukee also lost them back in October, so they haven't been able to beat them yet this year. We'll see what happens. I mean, the Milwaukee is 7-1 on the road, so they need to get their home figured out. So, they're winning on the road, so that's a good sign. But heading into our picks, let's see, going back to where we leave off, the 30th for the Predators. Let's see, you actually got the Edmonton one correct, the Nashville Edmonton one correct, and I was wrong. And then you got I was wrong 3 in a row, Colorado and LA. And you were correct in Colorado, but wrong on the LA. So we both got the Kings, Preds, one wrong. Then I got a little streak here. I got 1, 2, 3, 5 in a row right. Washington, Florida, Utah, at Colorado, at Edmonton. I got that one. They're all them right, and you got them all wrong except for Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Calgary, I was wrong, you were right. And then Vancouver, I was right and you were wrong. And then on the Detroit side, was it Winnipeg? Winnipeg, Buffalo, I was wrong, you were right. And then we were both right on Chicago. Toronto, I was right, you were wrong. And then we were both right on Rangers and Pittsburgh. And then the Anaheim, we were both wrong. And then the Kings were both right. And then the San Jose were both wrong. Go figure. I would not have thought they would lose to San Jose.
No, me neither.
I mean, yeah, it was in San Jose, but.
And I'm going for the next upcoming games here. The Islanders on the 21st, I'm going with a win. Boston, I'm going with a loss. And the Islanders, again, I'm going with a win. And then if we get up to Calgary, I'm going to say we win that.
27th is
I think Detroit's going to start a little streak here.
27th is the day before Thanksgiving, and they're at home just like the Predators. So before we switch over to the Predators side, I'm going to say a loss to the Islanders. They're not playing that bad. The Islanders aren't. They do tend to be inconsistent, but it is in Detroit though. Boston, they're kind of a mess, even though they just got a new coach, so they might spark a win. They might spark Boston to win, but I'm gonna go with a win for Detroit. And then they got at the Islanders again. Gee, is that a division game? They seem to play them a lot. So I'm going to say a win at New York. And then the Calgary's the day before Thanksgiving. I'm going to say that a loss. Hopefully we'll record before that. So moving to Seattle, moving to the Predators, they got one more road game trip on this CMA trip, which CMA is coming up actually on the same day as they play Seattle. I'm going with a win. And then they got Winnipeg back home on Saturday. I'm going to call that one a loss. And then they got New Jersey at New Jersey. I'm going to go with a loss. And then the day before Thanksgiving is Philadelphia. I'm going with a win. And then hopefully we'll should be able to record again next week, since I got nothing going on next week, rolling into the Thanksgiving holiday. So what do you what about your Preds?
I'm going for the Preds. I'm going to go Seattle loss, Winnipeg loss, New Jersey loss, and a Pittsburgh win.
You don't have as much faith in the Preds as the Wings, do you?
No, I just think that the Preds have made a turn and the Red Wings need to.
But you're calling 3 out of 4 losses.
I do. I think they're going to regress in this little stretch because they're playing some very difficult teams. So, yeah, I do have 3 losses, and you're not changing my mind.
But then again, I got 2 out of 4, so
I mean, you're right there.
I don't know. I think the Seattle
part of it's going to be the Seattle game.
The Seattle, I mean, they're coming off that win against Vancouver. I mean, Seattle, I mean, they're playing kind of funny, but I just think the Predators will find a way. I just have that feeling they'll find a way to beat them. So that's what we got for this coming week. Hopefully, we won't go another month without any shows.
I don't know if I can stay in one piece.
Me too. Our 100th episode is coming up fast. We got some clips cut for them, so we'll be playing some clips from our previous month, like season 1 and season 2. So, kind of looking back on our first 100 episodes. So, we'll stay tuned and we'll hear some pretty interesting things. Things that we kind of maybe forgot, but to get back into our prior season 1, season 2 stuff. So that's about all I got for tonight.
Yeah, me too.
Social media, PredWings Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, at PredWings Pod on X and YouTube, and you can always listen to us and follow us on Podbean, and our email is predwingspodcast@gmail.com. Once again, thanks for tuning in to the PredWings Podcast.
Good night, Hockey Town.
See ya, Smashville.